The following episode will contain spoilers. You have been warned.
You're listening to Cinema IRL, the podcast that throws you into the movie and asks the question, what would you do? Today, Amber and Scott discuss the benefits of not looking pretty after watching A Different Man. Most of them are in the movies, unfortunately. And now, Cinema IRL.
I wish I could switch places for just one day.
What would you do?
Put yourself in my shoes.
How do we handle this?
What would you do?
Put yourself in my position.
What would you do?
Now it's your turn.
And the moral of the story is, if you don't have a pretty face, you won't get blown by a hooker in a bathroom.
I don't know that woman was a hooker.
I don't know what she was, but
She was just a woman out at a club. Wow.
Well,
a girl can't dress nice and go out clubbing and have a good time without being called a hooker?
I don't know. I'm just saying that there was blowing in the bathroom, and it didn't happen until he had a pretty face.
Okay, so that was a very small point of the film that we are discussing this episode, which is A Different Man. Aspiring actor Edward undergoes a radical medical procedure to drastically transform his appearance, but his new dream face quickly turns into a nightmare as he loses out on the role he was born to play and becomes obsessed with reclaiming what was lost. And what this synopsis does not say is that Edward had a very prominent facial deformity. And we don't know how he got it, but we know he wasn't born with it. And he goes through life, as one would imagine, with, people looking at him and whatnot. Although, he seems fairly well adjusted. He's out in society engaging with people and whatnot. But
Somewhat.
he ultimately ends up participating in this test with some folks who get real treatment and some folks who get placebos. And fortunately for him, he is in the group that gets the real stuff, and all of the abnormality of his face just starts peeling away, and underneath it is the dashing Sebastian Stan.
Yeah, when you talk about miracle drugs, whatever that was a miracle.
Yeah, so we follow our character, Edward, as he kills off his prior persona, telling the doctors that Edward's dead, letting the neighbor believe that Edward's dead, and goes off to start a new life, and has his face plastered all over the subway as a real estate agent, and everyone loves him, and he has lots of friends, and he's dashing, and he sleeps around, and he's having a great old time until he happens to see his neighbor pass by in the street, who was a playwright, who she befriended him, and they had a friendly relationship. And she had talked about writing a play once with a part for him. So he sees her on the street, Ingrid, follows her to a theater, and long story short, finds out she's written a play about him and her. And he finds himself seeing the opportunity to play himself, but now he's pretty.
Yeah, there's a lot of what would you do, or really in this case, what would you not do in this situation?
So do tell.
I'm not killing myself off.
Yeah, I didn't understand that.
Why?
What would you do? I would just be like, oh my gosh, I had this amazing treatment, and look at me, I'm beautiful now. Let's go out and party.
Yeah.
That did seem extreme. I didn't understand the need.
Yeah,
that.
it doesn't seem as...
Especially the doctor, because for all he knew that was temporary or something, and he needed ongoing treatment or whatever. I thought that was kind of foolish.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that was a giant hole in the plot that just made me go, really? Really? I mean, obviously you need it to be able to tell the story that you want to tell, but okay, so let's say I've killed myself off.
Okay, so yes, when he is approached, the pretty guy, Pretty Edward is approached, and naturally they don't assume that he was original Edward because now he's beautiful. Even the doctor who's treating him now didn't realize that. So when he said Edward was dead, he also said Edward killed himself.
Yeah, so other things I would not do. Number one, if I'm the doctor, I would not wear a pair of glasses that has two different lens shapes in it. That was just weird.
Yes, a circle and a square.
Yeah, that was just odd. But at a certain point here, if I'm him, even though I'm pretty, I'm just coming out to her. What was her name?
Ingrid.
I'm coming out to Ingrid and saying, hey, FYI, know what I said? Had reasons for saying it? It's actually me. I'll prove it's me because I'll tell you that red typewriter that you have, you got from me because I found it on the street.
Okay, yes. So you're jumping ahead to when he actually then gets a part in Ingrid's play and gets a part as Edward and winds up using the mask that was created as a prototype through the doctor's office to be like, okay, this is what you look like originally. He ends up wearing this mask as part of being in the play as the role of Edward. And so he has this arrangement, this relationship with Ingrid, and doesn't disclose that he is the neighbor that Ingrid went to dinner with and came over and hung out with, and just doesn't say anything.
Yeah, let's just discard everything positive that she obviously saw. Like, it was clear from the beginning that she saw way past his deformity. So, like, it just baffles me that he would continue to hide that, especially once it became incredibly clear that not only was she not turned off by the deformity, but I'm just going to say the girl might have had a kink.
Yeah, because at one point they end up having a romantic relationship, and at one point when they're in bed, she does ask Edward to put on the mask that looks like he did before, which right there is another huge hole in the film of like, did she not realize that mask was exactly the face of Edward, her neighbor, who supposedly killed himself? It was exactly the same face.
Yeah, but I mean, theoretically, he killed himself.
I know, but wouldn't you be like, where did you get that face? How did you get that face made? It was exactly the same, but you get never mentioned.
It's like that face is like too perfectly weird.
Okay, so without falling into the hole here of reviewing the movie, because that's not what we do here. I don't want to poke any more holes here in some of the premises. But it was a really interesting film. So from a what would you do standpoint of you had something happen in your life that created this abnormality, this facial abnormality. And thinking about what would you do if something like that happened? And we never really are told why or how this happened. But that has got to be some major adjustment. When I look at what would you do, it would take a lot of fortitude to just still move through life doing what you do. And he was an actor. Like, he wasn't just trying out for that part as himself without Ingrid knowing. He actually was an actor by trade and had one of the roles we see is he was in this kind of HR video about treating people who look differently the same and engaging with them and whatnot. But it takes a lot of strength, I think, a lot of strength of character to still engage in life, because it would be so easy to check out.
I mean, my guess is he probably did check out for a while, realized he wasn't going to permanently check out, and then at a certain point you just have to say, okay, well, this is the hand I'm dealt. This is what I'm going forward with. I mean, it doesn't do me any good to do anything other than that. So you could tell, like, he wasn't super outgoing. Like, he wasn't, like, rushing the club or anything like that. Like, he would participate in public as he needed to, but seemingly given the option to go out into public for fun or just hang out at home, he seemed like he was more than happy to hang out at home.
Exactly. And when he got his pretty face, he did go out to the bar, got a drink, and then met the gal that you lovingly called a hooker who wanted to show him a good time in the bathroom. So he was enjoying life as a pretty man.
Yeah, I took a little umbrage at first with the fact that as soon as he became pretty, he had a wonderful personality.
I don't know if he had a wonderful personality.
But I mean, he had a much more well-adjusted personality than I would think, because
confidence. Confidence makes you act differently and move differently through life. If you feel confident in how you look, it affects how you engage, how you talk, how you walk. It affects everything about you.
But it was clear that he was very reclusive before.
Because he had a facial deformity that made him
but that's not something
insecure.
you necessarily can just flip the switch on and be like, oh, now I'm good. I'm not saying he couldn't get there. He absolutely could get there, given a little bit of time and probably therapy and everything. But it feels like, oh, my face is better now. Instantly, I am a completely new person. And if you've been like that for years and years and years and years, like that's a difficult switch to flip.
I'm going to disagree with you and just say you're playing with the DNA that God gave you. As a woman, you get a makeover, you get a haircut, you have someone do your makeup, you get a new outfit. Even the most introverted person is going to be walking and talking and interacting with everyone differently. Having confidence when you feel good about how you look is like flipping a switch. And maybe as a guy, that's just not something you can relate to. And, you know, in this case, obviously it wasn't a makeover, but it was a new face. So someone who now has gone from having little to no confidence to, wow, people not only don't look at me strangely, but they look at me in a way like, this guy's hot.
I mean, okay, so I'm going to use another movie example here as to what I feel is more like real life than what this was, and it goes more along your line, and that's Mean Girls. Like, she is very homely looking. Like, you can tell she could be pretty, but she doesn't dress pretty.
She wasn't homely. She was just very all-American, natural.
Very plain for what was there. They gave her a makeover. And all of a sudden, she's just ridiculously hot. But you could tell at first she had a really hard time fitting into that hot mold until she kind of got used to a little bit. And she's like, okay, yeah, I can do this. And then she's fine.
I don't think she was homely at all in the original Mean Girls or in the remake. I think she was just an average, ordinary, wholesome-looking girl. I don't think there was anything homely about either of those
Well, that's
characters.
the idea, is that she was this homely nerd.
She wasn't homely. She was just average. She was just run-of-the-mill girl next door. But yes, once she started dressing differently and acting differently and having a different friend group, yeah,
She got there eventually, but it took her a little bit of time, and that's just, you know, different hair, different makeup, different clothes. With Edward, it's a different face.
Yeah, I'm gonna, if you're gonna make a comparison to another film, I'd probably pick I Feel Pretty. And that film is actually about a gal who is overweight and then all of a sudden starts seeing herself as this just hot glamour girl supermodel type, and how she instantly starts talking and walking and acting differently because she has confidence. So confidence is everything.
Again, I am not saying that he couldn't be that person. I'm just saying that switch takes a little bit of time to flip, but we are really hitting this point in. So what would you do if presented with the idea for this surgery?
Heck yeah, you got nothing to lose.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's not true. I mean, he did have a life. He did have something that was going.
Well, it wasn't deadly. Do this thing or you might die.
Well,
or a side effect is dying. Like there was no downside.
Well, no, they were very clear the entire time that the risks are worth the rewards, i.e., we don't know how bad this could end up being for you.
Yeah, he did have to take some pills to protect his kidneys and whatnot. And like any sort of treatment in today's medical system, there are side effects. You're right.
Yeah, I mean, and it could have gone completely wrong too.
I'll take a couple of years as Sebastian Sam and, you know, with some beaten up kidneys, I think.
Oh yeah. No, don't get me wrong. And especially when they went to the doctor and he's like, yeah, this isn't a problem or too big a problem yet, or this isn't too big a problem yet, but we need to keep an eye on this, and this will eventually be a problem. So yeah, I mean, if I'm him, I'm taking the swing here because like, and I thought it was interesting early in the movie when they saw that one person in 4B who killed himself, who was a normal looking guy.
Yeah.
And like, it was kind of a, you think you've got problems, look at what my problems are type thing, and you killed yourself? What? I mean, yeah, he's in the position where, yeah, I could see somebody like that being like, yeah, you know, with this, maybe we're going to try again next life. I'm not saying I would, and I'm not saying I would advocate for it, but I'm saying I could see somebody in that position succumbing to those thoughts, especially when you see somebody who's clearly in a better position.
But we don't know.
Well, from
the guy who killed himself, we don't know what his backstory
from what you could outwardly tell, and that's what this was more than anything. It was outward.
Yeah, you don't know what's going on in people's lives, and I'm always very attuned to the fact that you cannot judge a book by its cover. Social media is something I talk about frequently. People put out the best of themselves on social media. Oh, we went here. Oh, our family did this. Here we're all smiling in a pool. Here we're all smiling on a beach. They don't show you the eating disorders or the kid who's huffing paint or, you know, the woman who's sticking her finger down her throat after every meal. People don't show you the dirty laundry they have. So in regards to the neighbor killing himself, we don't know what his situation was, but I think that's kind of the point. To your point is that we all have our struggles. We don't know what each other's struggles are, and you're still pushing through in spite of this very severe facial deformity that life has given you that
Yeah.
you weren't born with.
Also on the what would you do scale, what was the other guy's name?
So there was a character who comes in towards the end of the film who very cleverly weasels away the role of Edward from Edward, and who's now named himself Guy because he killed off Edward. So this new guy, Oswald, comes into the picture, and he actually has a natural physical facial deformity like Edward did, and he winds up weaseling away the role of Edward from Edward/Guy.
Which, interestingly enough, the actor actually has that deformity. This was not
real-
like this was
right.
actually him. I mean, I'm sure there was some form of makeup used, but it wasn't like a prosthetic. Like that's actually a condition he has.
Right.
So, I mean, I could understand him being like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa! You're gonna cast some normal dude with a mask when you could have the real macaw."
Yeah.
I think I used the wrong term there.
Yeah.
The real something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see him wanting to weasel his way in, but it was interesting because it was such a lights on moment for Edward that he was able to come in and he could be himself. He could have a charming personality, be very outgoing. He could have ladies that were very hot coming up to him being like, "Hey, when are we getting back together?" Like,
And I think that goes back to confidence
Oh, yeah,
because
it-
Oswald, even though he had a very similar facial deformity
He had
to
the
what Edward had,
confidence.
he had confidence. He walked up, he did karaoke, he engaged with people, he laughed, he went out to the park, he acted as though he had the physical appearance
Yeah.
as everyone else.
And I want to make sure I'm clear. I wasn't arguing with your point about confidence earlier. 100%. You're right. Confidence is what can make it. It's just sometimes not easy to flip that switch on the confidence. But it's clear with Oswald, he didn't have to flip a switch. This was just who he was. He always was that way. He was always confident. And he never succumbed to the woe is me
Right.
reclusion. And it was clear. I mean,
It's an interesting premise, and it definitely was an interesting movie of what would you do if you had an opportunity to shed your physical challenges and engage with the world like everyone else. Would you take it? And then you take it, and now you've been presented with this role of a lifetime that you ended up getting booted from because you don't look like you used to,
Yes.
even though the play is actually about you, but you're keeping it a secret.
yes, yes. I mean, let's not rehash the plot here too much. Let's get to what you do. At the end, I thought it was very interesting, though, when the physical therapist made a backhanded comment to Edward about Oswald. Like, how did he get that woman? He must have a lot of money, i.e., you're a piece of shit because you have a facial deformity. Like, Edward was no fan of Oswald's at that point.
Because
Clearly,
Oswald had
but-
married Ingrid.
yeah, but it was still enough for Edward to stab the physical therapist.
Right.
Which felt a little out of the blue. Like, I mean, that's just a comment. Maybe not a great one, but I don't know if it's stab worthy.
He was in a low place.
Yeah, but man, he was doing back and forth with that physical therapist. But all of a sudden, when he needed to stab someone, his legs worked not great, but good enough to stab a physical therapist.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if I agree with that and the ensuing jail time that came from it. But yeah, no, confidence is everything, boys and girls.
We hope you enjoyed our episode. Thank you for listening. And to catch all the new episodes, please subscribe. We release 2 to 3 episodes weekly, so we'll have new content regularly. Until next time.